New Cowboy coordinators Todd, Grantham, and Doug Meacham definitely inspire a lot of confidence and optimism right now in Stillwater, Oklahoma. You should and could make the argument, though, that the position coaches they have both brought in are even better.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of some of the position coaches that have been brought in. We have a lot to cover, but I wanted to start with two that seem to be the most exciting to me personally. And one of those, obviously, is at the quarterback position. Tim Rattay definitely earned the respect of the quarterbacks in the recruiting cycle. He earned the respect of the quarterbacks in the room, which is what allowed us to have a significant amount of retention. But the developmental side from Tim Rattay in the beginning of a Cowboy and to the end of him being a Cowboy were not really very visible. Now enter Kevin Johns, most recently from OU, but Kevin Johns dates back to Dayton, Ohio. He's an Ohio kid. At Dayton, he was a Division I AA first-team All-American, National Player of the Year, and League MVP. After that, he took his talents to the high school ranks, coached a year of high school football in the state of Ohio before taking a job under legendary old-school coach Randy Walker at Northwestern. He was retained by Pat Fitzgerald right after that, and then he got to be in charge of the quarterbacks, one being Brett Bassinez, who threw for 10,580 yards, who still holds over 11 Northwestern records to this day, ended up playing some games for the Carolina Panthers, and then also was brought in by the Chicago Bears to be a depth piece. After Northwestern, Kevin Johns took his talents to Indiana as the offensive coordinator, quarterback, and wide receivers coach. Under Kevin Wilson, he was able to develop quarterback Nate Sudfeld to a 7,880-yard time in college with 61 touchdowns, 144 QBR rating, and he was drafted by the Washington Commanders. Then he also coached up Tevin Coleman, a running back who had 3,219 yards and was drafted third round by the Atlanta Falcons. He also produced wide receiver Jordan Howard, who had over 1,300 yards in just 1 year at Indiana, was drafted in the fifth round by the Chicago Bears. Additionally, another wide receiver who played with the Tennessee Titans after Indiana's Nick Westbrook. Then he decided to go to Texas Tech. In 2018, he was the offensive coordinator for Coach Bro, a.k.a. Cliff Kingsbury. And yes, Alan Bowman was his quarterback that beat Oklahoma State in 2018. Additionally, Alan Bowman was being pegged by Cliff Kingsbury as one of the next big things to play quarterback at Texas Tech right after Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, injuries started derailing Alan Bowman, and he never really quite got back to that level. But also, while at Texas Tech, he developed wide receiver Antoine Wesley, who had over 1,500 yards, was a first-team All-American and a first-team All-Big 12 member, being drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. His career kind of exploded with the Cardinals in the NFL, and then he finished out with the Raiders. He also recruited and was very instrumental in the development of Eric Ezukama, who caught almost 2,200 yards at Texas Tech, first-team All-Big 12, drafted in the fourth round by the Dolphins, and is still currently with the Miami Dolphins to this day. Then in 2019, he went on to Memphis. From Memphis, 2019-2021, he was able to produce quarterback Brady White, who threw for 10,400 yards, 90 touchdowns, 154 QBR rating, and he set records at the University of Memphis for wins, yards in a season, and touchdowns. On top of the quarterback, he got Patrick Taylor Jr., the running back, to produce 2,880 yards with 36 touchdowns. Then he became a Green Bay Packer, followed by the New England Patriots, and now he's a San Francisco 49er. He's still on the active roster and just signed a new deal. Another running back that he developed at Memphis was Kenny Gainwell, 1,550 yards in just 2 years, ended up being a fifth-round draft selection by the Philadelphia Eagles. And then wide receiver / running back, a dude that could do both. Antonio Gibson is a first-team All-ACC member who was drafted in the 3rd round by the Washington Commanders and now is with the New England Patriots. Coach Kevin Johns then went on to Duke, where he got to coach under Mike Elko. He recruited and brought in Riley Leonard, helped Riley Leonard develop to the point where he threw for 6,743 yards in his career, while almost 70% of that was all at Duke under Kevin Johns. Riley Leonard still is in the top 7 for multiple Duke single-season history records, alongside guys like Thaddeus Lewis and Daniel Jones. Pretty daggone good company because of Kevin Johns. After Mike Elko took the job at Texas A&M, Kevin Johns took his talents to OU, where obviously it was kind of a back-and-forth affair with Jackson Arnold, but the developmental side of the game came from Michael Hawkins Jr. Additionally, Kevin Johns taking over around the midseason-ish mark to become the co-OC after they fired Seth Luttrell. And his second game as the co-OC was the OU versus Bama game. Obviously, that was their biggest win of the season. It also catapulted them into having a bowl game. The things that really struck me in some of the interviews and videos and things of that nature pertaining to Kevin Johns was his outlook on the quarterback position. And he said while he was at Duke, while going through the recruiting process, these are the things that he looks for out of a high school quarterback: intelligence, toughness, athleticism, and confidence. Additionally, if you are not at least 65 to 70% completion percentage in high school, he has openly said that your chances of being a good college quarterback are pretty slim. So those are things that he looks at in the recruiting realm as well. He's your completion percentage above all else. Another big thing that I love about Kevin Johns, I've said it 13,000 times, a coach's only job is to simply put the players in the best positions to be successful. He said that out of his own very mouth while he was at Duke, and it really painted the perfect picture for me in him coming here. Another big thing that I find pretty interesting about Kevin Johns is he's fairly open about the transfer portal and how he's not the biggest fan of it, but he understands that a lot of kids deserve another opportunity. So he understands that there's a lot of positive to the portal as well, but it also gives people the ability to give up whenever things get overly difficult and just leave and try to find a new home somewhere else. So if you're a transfer quarterback, you better be pretty phenomenal for Kevin Johns to have some interest in you. And we're about to have one that everybody's going to be excited about. And I think obviously on top of Doug Meacham, Kevin Johns has a big hand in this, but Kevin Johns also helped recruit Garrett Rangel to some degree whenever he was in high school. So there's some familiarity there. And we're about to have another quarterback enter the fold that I think is going to have everybody beyond excited. Todd Grantham. It's been no surprise that he's been able to bring in some guys at Oklahoma State that we're not traditionally able to bring in, primarily because of the Florida ties, the SEC ties dating back to some of his days with Georgia, and even he went through the Nick Saban retraining school. And then Todd Grantham has brought some phenomenal pieces alongside on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think any of them are more exciting than Jules Montinar. I think Brian Montinati when I say that name, but you do you. He is a Florida native that played cornerback at both Eastern Kentucky and a couple years at West Virginia. He then went on to be a GA at Eastern Kentucky after the 2007 NFL internship program where he was with the Cincinnati Bengals. After that, he took that into a career with Purdue as a GA, followed by a job with Bama. While at Bama, of course, he worked under the DC legend Kirby Smart, who was managed by, obviously, Nick Saban. They put 7 NFL DBs together, including the first round, Clinton Dix, second round, Landon Collins, fourth round, Eddie Jackson, and fifth rounder, Vinny Cincinnati. All because of the development, partially from Jules Montinar, that he learned from guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. Of course, he took that to Texas State, where he was a special teams coach and cornerbacks coach. He coached under the legendary Dennis Francione. Primarily, I recognize his name from when he was at Texas A&M. While he was at Texas State, he was named the Sun Belt Recruiter of the Year. He recruited Jimmy Moreland. They went on to win an FCS national title. Jimmy Moreland had 18 picks, 5 of those for a touchdown. He returned 5 for touchdowns. He holds school records And he was drafted 7th round by the Washington Commanders. He played with the Texans, Eagles, and Jets. Then after some time at Texas State, he went to Georgia as a defensive assistant and quality control specialist. This is another iteration of the Kirby Smart system where he was under Dan Lanning. They produced 13 NFL linebackers and defensive backs, some big names that in the defensive backfield that he worked with: Eric Stokes, J.R. Reed, Richard LeCount III, Tyson Campbell, linebackers Quay Walker, Tate Crowder, and Jermaine Johnson. Then he catapulted that Georgia success to South Florida, where he was the DB's coach and the head recruiting coordinator. Fun fact, he got to work alongside Glenn Spencer, former Cowboy coordinator as well. He recruited and helped develop guys like Timmy McClain, Jimmy Horn Jr., and Xavier Weaver while at South Florida. So, of course, he took that on to Florida, where all of this connection comes with Todd Grantham and some of the other individuals that Todd Grantham has brought with him. In 2021, he was the cornerbacks coach under, obviously, Todd Grantham, head coach Dan Mullen. They had the number 4 ranked SEC passing defense. They gave up just under 208 yards per game. He was able to develop Traquise Bridges into 160 tackles and 6 interceptions, who is currently projected as a draft pick in the 2024 draft. Rashad Torrance, top 5 in SEC, signed by the Rams. Kyer Elam, 2-time All-SEC, 79 tackles, 6 interceptions, first-round selection by the Buffalo Bills, who already has 59 tackles, 5 pass breakups, and 2 picks in his short NFL career. He was also responsible for the development of Ethan Pouncey, Elijah Blades, and the 4-star, number 92 overall, defensive back Mordecai McDaniel, who has now taken his talents to Stillwater, America, so there's even more of that connection there. He then went on to Temple, where he was a cornerbacks coach. There's not a lot of note there. He wasn't there for very long, but clearly there's a connection there with our new defensive tackle, Demerick Morris. Then finally at East Carolina, he kind of came in with all new transfers. But while doing so, he convinced some key guys like Gavin Gibson from Maryland, Dontavius Nash and Tamir Brown from North Carolina, Andrew Wilson Lamp from West Virginia, to all transfer to East Carolina. Their leading tackler was a defensive back. Omar Rodgers had 97 tackles as a DB and 24 tackles for loss, 8 total picks. The team had 13 interceptions for 204 yards and 3 touchdowns returned all the way. Out of 949 tackles, 381 of them were by the defensive backs. So over 58% of East Carolina's tackles were by the DBs. And that is going to catapult a couple of them into having NFL opportunities. He is extremely aggressive. He emphasizes tackling and run support and taking away particular sections of the field to benefit the rest of the defense. These 2 hires are, to me, almost as big, if not bigger, than the hires of Todd Grantham and Doug Meacham. The more guys that we're able to attract are because of the pedigree that they've established in the SEC and the NFL. Again, what we're doing on both sides of the ball is starting to come together. If Doug Meacham can start to round out this transfer class with a couple other options that may be classified a little bit more quote-unquote sexy, that'll get everybody equally as excited on the offensive side of the ball, and I feel like we're really daggone close. Just like you should feel pretty close to monitoring the things that you have going on in the background, because we don't always pay attention to the things that we have paid for subscription-wise in the past. Rocket Money is here to help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice. It definitely happens to all of us. I mean, I've had some subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant with you 24/7. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your money habits, or even goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscription, saving members up to $740 a year while using the app's premium features. The best feature is the subscription tracker. You can also use it to cancel services that you're not going to utilize anymore. And I've already said that you're going to be able to save a ton. So get on board today with their goals feature. you're going to be able to automatically set aside money for the future. So you don't have to stress anymore about the monthly budget when you have Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals, and do so faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Again, that is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go there today to get the subscription craziness more or less completely out of your way. So now that we have a decent understanding of some of the position coaches that are coming in alongside the new DC and the new OC, I think one of the things that we need to be kind of excited about is the reinvigoration by the locker room. And what I mean by that is when you're going through the recruiting process, there's a significant amount of stress, not only for the student athlete, but the parents and the families and the coaches, because there's a lot to digest. And there's a lot of moving parts nowadays in the new ever-changing landscape of collegiate football. So you have to have an understanding of NIL and the relationships. Relationships are the key here. But whenever you're going through recruiting and you go through all the stress and you finally get a committable offer, then you commit. The stress level goes down a significant amount. Then you sign your letter of intent. Now you're officially a Cowboy or wherever university you're signing with. Very seldom after all of that does more stress come back up. But for this coming 2025 Oklahoma State Cowboy roster, they had to go through a round of cuts, which is not something that is talked about when you're going through the recruiting process, right? Cutting scholarship athletes is not very typical. Of course, numerically having to get down from 135 to 105, it's going to have a heavy hand in all of this happening. But we know with our own very eyes, this previous season was a lot about complacency and laziness that started with the coaching staff, and it leaked into the players, causing a decent amount of starters to essentially cash it in because it looked to them like their coaches were essentially doing the same thing. The clearing out of the staffs were imperative. From the dudes that I've talked to that are still with Oklahoma State currently, they're beyond elated to have completely new blood all the way across the board on both sides of the ball, primarily because the things that took place last year are no longer going to be a major factor. Playing the seniors and the super seniors and the favorites, that's not going to be the case. So although this equaled a whole new level of stress for a lot of these individuals, the fact that you've got dudes saying, oh my gosh, I made the cut. Oh crap, hey, I'm still on the team. It excited these dudes. It made it almost feel like they were going back through the recruiting process once again to see if they were going to be designated as good enough or worthwhile enough to keep around as a future Cowboy. So those dudes that made the cut, they are insanely excited about not only the coaches that are being brought in, but additionally, some of the dudes that were being brought in too, because competition equals the ability to find excellence. So the guys that have stayed, they've bought in all the way to the Cowboy rebuild. They want to be a part of the new direction of Oklahoma State football, and they're not running away from the competition that is in fact coming in because, unlike the last couple seasons, everybody on the roster starts with a clean slate. Right? Garrett Rangel is one of those individuals that regardless of whom we're going to bring in, he's going to start spring with a clean slate. There's not going to be Alan Bowman, a.k.a. Gundy's buddy, ahead of him getting guaranteed QB1 reps. They're going to have to earn it, and whoever earns it is going to get the right to play. And that's synonymous across the defensive side of the ball as well. Justin Kirkland, I'm sure he cannot wait to have the opportunity to prove that the last couple seasons, even he knows he hasn't technically developed enough to make it make a whole lot of sense. Now that you have coaches that are at so many different positions strategically, because it's not like we just have a few position coaches. We have position coaches for like every individual position, including guys like Nickelback. Our Nickelback position has his own coach. That is something that we don't typically do. And it is something that has a lot of these dudes excited. The fact that everybody starts with a clean slate means that the best will play. The best will have the opportunity to win the job through spring and fall camp. That will equal the depth chart. So whatever they've done in the past, whether it's at Oklahoma State or previously, is not really going to be taken in consideration. It's how are you going to show up in spring? How are you going to handle your business? How are you going to get down with the scholastics and get used to the campus and also be productive? So even guys like Emil Talib and Jonathan Agumadu and Gunnar Wilson and Landon Cleveland, David Kabongo, all of those dudes understand that they get a clean slate as well. Even some of the guys who got to play last year a little bit, and Emil Talib, he's not super safe on that 105 line. But he feels confident if he gets the development that these guys are capable of bringing, including linebackers coach like Cap Dede and Ryan McNamara, that he too will be able to excel and earn one of those scholarship spots. I'm telling you, the fact that these guys had to go through the turmoil of, am I still on this team or not? It made a big, big deal. And it should make a very big difference when spring does in fact come, even with the new wave of transfers that we have coming in. This is exactly what we needed. And I firmly believe that if we had done the same old song and dance and retained all of the same coaches, that we would have dealt with more of a transfer portal style mass exodus situation. But a decent number of these guys that were told they make the cut to stay if you want to stay, most of them stayed. The ones that left were kind of pushed out, which we are going to talk about here in a second. Clean slate, new look for everybody across the board is exciting. It adds a completely new layer of excitement to the offseason for Oklahoma State football after our worst season realistically since 1994. It wasn't a hammer the over year for the Cowboys, but next season might be better. All right, hammering the over this season didn't go super swimmingly for us, but thankfully we have several NFL Cowboys that are allowing us to still potentially capitalize on the monetary situation. With the NFL playoffs almost right around the corner, it's still not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, you can finish the regular season strong with a $250 bonus bet if your $5 hauler is a winner. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up the next massive W, whether you're trying to see if Jaylen Warren's going to pop off a little bit more or Justice Hill's going to come back and be ready to rock and roll for next week. Is Tylan Wallace going to continue ascending? Is Tyreek Hill going to break it out for over 92 yards? You can make determinations on all of this with FanDuel. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Join today for your chance at 250 bones back in bonus bets. Make every single moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so on top of the clean slate, because a lot of these individuals were either cut or they graduated or they're going to the NFL draft, I don't want everybody to lose sight of the fact that most of these dudes were part of the epic Big 12 title run against Texas just a couple of short years ago. Potentially, it was a little bit of a mirage, but Brennan Presley was not a mirage. Brennan Presley setting the all-time receptions leader list at Oklahoma State is definitely a memory that we'll all be very fond of. Nick Martin's ascension from being a 6 foot, 205-pound linebacker to a 6 foot, 230-pound best linebacker in the conference and one of the best linebackers in the country in just a couple short years will always be remembered. Matter of fact, we're going to have to compare this next roster addition, like Brian McCoy, to what Nick Martin was able to do. Thankfully, they're around the same size, around the same speed, have a lot of the same capabilities. But Nick Martin is going to be that barometer now after Malcolm Rodriguez. Same thing can be said about Colin Oliver. Is Chandavian Bradley going to take his big 4-star Missouri Player of the Year talent to Tennessee? Is he going to be able to bring that with the addition of him now playing linebacker to Oklahoma State to look a little bit like Colin Oliver? Time will tell. Of course, you have some other individuals like Alan Bowman entering the draft, but you've got Hudson Clark. I'm telling y'all, he's going to be a big loss, but we're going to be able to witness his athleticism and the ability be unlocked potentially at Auburn. Lyric Rawls going up to KU. I think a lot of us are going to have a lot of fond memories of Lyric Rawls and everything that he was able to provide as a Cowboy in Stillwater. We didn't get to see enough of Jason Queso Brooks. Well, we're going to see quite a bit of him going against other Big 12 schools, including us, because now he's at Houston. Dujon Stribling, I don't think anybody begrudges the fact that he took an offer from Ole Miss. He played his way into a financial category that just didn't make a whole lot of sense for us. It is what it is. We are where we are. And on top of that, we have a significant number of individuals that just happen to be going through the graduation phase. Whenever you combine all of this, I don't think that any of us are going to lose sight of the fact that we got to see a lot of great Cowboys, including Ollie Gordon, that we'll always have fond memories of. Cody Walterscheid, he was a diehard through and through Cowboy all the way through. Xavier Ross was able to kind of hang tough and battle through some adversity. You had Tyler Foster come in to try to kind of take some of what Josiah Johnson did the year prior to that. But we've got some freshmen that are able to step up. And to Kelvin Beeman, kind of a surprising loss as a DB. I think safety Tywan Ray is leaving before he can get the most out of his capabilities. But we have a significant number of walk-ons that are obviously taking their talents elsewhere as well. This is primarily due to the 105 numerical factor. But even though we had our first winless conference season since 94, one of our worst seasons of the last 30 plus years, we still have a decent amount that we get to kind of remember. From the developmental side of the game to the experiences like with Dalton Cooper, getting to see a little bit of Isaiah Glass was nice. And I just don't want us to lose sight of the fact that even though it was rough, there were still some things amongst this last season that were worth the watch. They were worth the price of admission. They were worth their weight in gold, including some of the performances by the backup quarterbacks this season. Is there an overabundance of things to get super excited about in this previous season? No, obviously not. But part of turning a new leaf, I think, is giving a little bit of praise to the dudes who stuck it through. Because Brendan Presley was battling through so many injuries, I don't know that it made a whole lot of sense for him to continue to play throughout the course of the season. I think the same could be said to some degree about Ollie Gordon. But they're gamers. They love Oklahoma State. They love playing on Boone Pickens. They love the memories they've created. And I'm sure, like BP loves being up in the record books because he earned it. Being an Oklahoma kid, number one all time in receptions at Oklahoma State is something that he'll be able to hang his hat on forever. And he'll be welcomed back by everybody, no matter what. So shout out to all of the dudes that are in fact graduating. Shout out to some of the guys that are taking their talents elsewhere because it didn't really look like they were going to fit into the new system at Oklahoma State. And the NFL draft guys. Some of you transfer individuals, I don't know that it makes the most amount of sense, but I also understand it is what it is. And we wish a lot of you success as you continue your college football playing experience. All righty, y'all. I reckon that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone hang. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast and people out there. You're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, the funny stuff, the funky stuff. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.